I believed I was the beloved daughter who had finally made something of herself. I thought my family was proud of me, proud of how I'd climbed out of the small town where dreams go to die, proud of my corner office in the city, proud of the woman I'd become. I was wrong about everything. It started on a Tuesday evening. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my phone buzzed with a notification from my Aunt Linda. She'd sent me a video file. Nothing unusual there. Linda was always forwarding random clips, cooking tutorials, funny animal videos, those inspirational quotes overlaid on sunset photos that middle-aged women seem to love. But hey, if you're enjoying this story so far, why not hit that subscribe button? Trust me, you'll want to stick around for what happens next. And don't forget to smash that like button if you're already hooked. I almost didn't open it immediately. The reports needed my attention, and I had an early meeting the next morning. But something about the thumbnail caught my eye. It looked like it was filmed in my childhood home's kitchen, the same outdated wallpaper visible in the background. Curious, I tapped play. The video was shaky, clearly recorded without the filmer's knowledge. The phone must have been propped against something, forgotten, and still recording. But the audio was crystal clear, and what I heard made my blood turn to ice water in my veins. "Emily thinks she's so successful now," came my mother's voice, dripping with disdain I'd never heard directed at me before. "Living in that fancy apartment, wearing those expensive clothes. But we all know the truth, don't we?" Laughter erupted from multiple voices. My father, my younger sister Sarah, and yes, even Aunt Linda herself. My father's voice cut through the cruel amusement. "She's still the same pathetic failure she always was. Remember how she used to cry when the other kids wouldn't play with her? Some things never change. The difference is now she has money to throw around." Sarah chimed in, her voice bright with malicious glee. "Did you see that designer bag she brought to Mom's birthday? Probably cost more than my car payment. She's just trying to buy our love, because she knows deep down she's still that awkward, desperate little girl nobody wanted around." My hands started shaking. This couldn't be real. These were the people who called me their success story, who bragged to their friends about their daughter making it big in the city. The same people who asked for my advice on everything from career moves to investment strategies. If you're feeling as shocked as Emily right now, make sure you're subscribed because this story is about to take some incredible turns. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss what Emily discovers next, and drop a like if you can already feel your heart racing. "She's always been good at pretending," my mother continued, and I could hear the smile in her voice, the same warm smile she'd given me just last weekend when I'd visited for Sunday dinner. "Remember how she used to make up stories about having friends at school? Now she makes up stories about being happy and successful. It's actually kind of sad." "What's sad is how hard she tries," Linda added. I could picture her shaking her head with that pitying expression she reserved for the neighbors she gossiped about. "All those expensive gifts, the fancy dinners she pays for when she visits. She's so desperate for us to think she matters." The laughter that followed was the sound of my heart breaking. These weren't strangers mocking me behind my back. This was my family, the people I'd moved mountains for, the people I'd worked 80-hour weeks to impress, the people whose approval had driven every major decision in my adult life. "At least she's useful now," my father said with a chuckle. "Remember when she offered to pay for Sarah's wedding venue? And that time she sent money when I was between jobs? She might be a pathetic failure as a person, but she's a pretty good ATM." More laughter. My sister's voice. "God, Dad, you're terrible. But you're not wrong. I mean, what else is she good for? It's not like she has a real family of her own. No husband, no kids, just that pathetic career she thinks makes her special." I sat frozen in my office chair, the reports forgotten, watching my entire world crumble through a 3-minute video that my aunt had accidentally sent me. The phone in my hands felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the video ended. A notification popped up immediately. "This message has been deleted by the sender." Linda had realized her mistake. I stared at that notification for a long time, my reflection ghost-like in the darkened window of my office. Outside, the city sparkled with a million lights, each one representing someone else's life, someone else's family, someone else's truth. I'd thought I was part of something beautiful, something worth working for. Instead, I'd been the punchline to a joke I didn't even know was being told. My phone buzzed again. A text from Linda. "Hey sweetie, hope you're having a good week. Can't wait to see you at the family barbecue this weekend. Red heart." I turned off my phone and sat in the darkness of my office, finally understanding that everything I'd built my adult life around was a lie. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I heard their laughter echoing in my head, each cruel word playing on repeat like a broken record. By morning, I looked like I'd been hit by a truck, but I had a choice to make: confront them immediately or play along and see just how deep this deception went. I chose the latter. Something told me that if I revealed what I knew right away, they'd just deny it, gaslight me, make me feel like I was overreacting. I needed to understand the full scope of their betrayal first. My phone had been buzzing all morning with messages from the family group chat. Sarah was excited about some new restaurant she wanted to try. Mom was sharing photos of her garden. Dad was complaining about his back pain. Linda was sending her usual stream of motivational memes. It was all so perfectly, disgustingly normal. I decided to test the waters. I typed, "Hey everyone, I've been thinking about taking some time off work. Maybe I'll come visit for a longer stay soon?" The responses came flooding in immediately. "Mom, oh honey, that would be wonderful. You work too hard anyway." Sarah, "Yes, we could have so much sister time." Linda, "The guest room is always ready for you, sweetie." Dad, "About time you remembered where you came from." I stared at these messages, each one a masterpiece of manipulation disguised as love. They wanted me to visit because I was their walking, talking ATM. Just like Dad had said in the video. The enthusiasm in their responses had nothing to do with missing me as a person, and everything to do with what I could provide. But I wasn't done testing them yet. I had to know how far this went. Actually, I typed, "I've been having some financial troubles lately. The company's been cutting bonuses and I had some unexpected expenses." I hit send and waited. The silence was deafening. 3 dots appeared and disappeared multiple times as they typed and deleted responses. Finally, Sarah wrote, "Oh no. Are you okay? Do you need help?" But something felt off about the timing, like she'd had to think carefully about what to say. Mom's response came next. "Don't worry about money, sweetheart. Family is more important than anything else." Again, it felt rehearsed, like she was reading from a script of things a loving mother should say. The real test came when Linda finally responded, "Maybe this isn't the best time for a long visit then. You should focus on getting back on your feet first." There it was. The moment I mentioned financial troubles, suddenly the enthusiasm for my visit evaporated. Linda, who had just told me my guest room was always ready, was now suggesting I stay away until I was financially stable again. I felt sick to my stomach, but I pushed forward with my experiment. "You're probably right, Aunt Linda. I should probably skip the family barbecue this weekend too. I can't really afford the gas money right now, and I wouldn't want to show up empty-handed." The response was immediate and telling. "Dad, don't be ridiculous, Emily. Family doesn't care about gifts." But then, just minutes later, "Though if you're really struggling, maybe it would be better to wait until things improve," Sarah chimed in. "Yeah, no pressure, Em. We'll miss you, but we understand." I sat back in my office chair, staring at these messages in disbelief. Less than 24 hours ago, they were calling me a pathetic failure behind my back. Now they were pretending to be supportive, while simultaneously disinviting me from family events the moment I suggested I might not be able to contribute financially. But the most revealing response came from my mother. "Emily, are you sure everything's okay? This doesn't sound like you. You're usually so generous with the family." Generous. That's what they called it when I paid for dinners, bought gifts, covered expenses. Not loving, not caring, generous. Like I was a charity case making donations to earn my place at the family table. I realized I'd been performing for them my entire adult life, and they'd been performing right back. The difference was, I'd been sincere in my performance. I genuinely thought I was showing love through my generosity. They, on the other hand, had been acting out of pure self-interest. The worst part was how good they were at it. If I hadn't seen that video, I never would have questioned their motives. Every "I love you" felt real. Every proud smile seemed genuine. Every expression of concern appeared heartfelt. But now I knew the truth. They didn't love Emily the person. They loved Emily the provider. They didn't want their daughter and sister around. They wanted their personal financial safety net. As I sat there reading and rereading their messages, trying to decode which parts were genuine concern and which parts were calculated manipulation, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, sharp and fresh, but underneath it was something else. Anger. They thought I was pathetic. They thought I was desperate. They thought I was still that awkward little girl nobody wanted around. Well, it was time to show them just how wrong they were. I started typing a response that would change everything. Actually, you know what? I think I'm feeling better already. I'll definitely be at the barbecue this weekend. Can't wait to see everyone. But before I hit send, I deleted it. If they wanted to play games, I'd play games. But this time, I'd be the one writing the rules. This time, Emily the pathetic failure was about to become Emily the chess master. I spent the rest of that week planning my approach. If my family wanted to treat me like their personal ATM while mocking me behind my back, then I was going to give them exactly what they deserved, a taste of their own medicine. But I had to be smart about it. Rushing in with accusations would only make them close ranks and deny everything. Instead, I decided to become the perfect observer. I would attend the family barbecue as planned, but this time I'd be watching and listening with completely different eyes and ears. No more rose-colored glasses. No more giving them the benefit of the doubt. I wanted to see their true faces now that I knew what to look for. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood perfectly. I drove the familiar route to my childhood home, but everything felt different now. The tree-lined streets that used to fill me with nostalgia now seemed to whisper secrets. Even my old neighborhood felt like it was in on the joke. I pulled into the driveway behind Dad's pickup truck and sat for a moment, steeling myself for what was to come. Through the kitchen window I could see Mom bustling around, probably preparing her famous potato salad. Sarah's car was already there, which meant she'd likely spent the night. Just like old times, except nothing was like old times anymore. Linda opened the front door before I even knocked. "Emily! There's my successful city girl!" she exclaimed, pulling me into a hug that now felt performative rather than warm. "We were so worried about you after those texts this week. You seem much better now, though." "Yeah, I'm feeling a lot more optimistic," I replied, studying her face for any hint of the woman who had called me pathetic just days ago. She looked exactly the same. Kind eyes, gentle smile, the aunt who had always been my ally. The cognitive dissonance was almost overwhelming. Dad appeared in the hallway, beer already in hand, despite it being barely noon. "There she is!" Our little workaholic finally decided to take a break. He squeezed my shoulder with what I'd always interpreted as fatherly pride. Now I wondered if it was more like a pat you'd give a reliable employee. "Where's Sarah?" I asked, looking around the living room that hadn't changed since my high school graduation. "Kitchen, helping your mother," Dad replied. "You know how she is. Can't sit still when there's food to prepare." I made my way to the kitchen, where Mom and Sarah were indeed working side by side. The scene was so perfectly domestic, so wonderfully normal, that for a split second I questioned whether I'd imagined the whole video. Maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe the audio had been distorted. Maybe. "Emily!" Sarah practically bounced over to me, wrapping me in one of her signature enthusiastic hugs. "I'm so glad you decided to come after all. When you were talking about money troubles, I thought for sure you'd cancel." There it was, the first crack in the facade. Sarah's relief wasn't about seeing her sister. It was about the fact that I'd shown up despite my supposed financial difficulties. She was probably wondering if I'd still be contributing to the family coffers. "Well, I figured family is more important than money," I said, echoing Mom's earlier text word for word. I watched Sarah's face carefully as I spoke. "Absolutely," she agreed quickly. "Though speaking of money, I actually wanted to ask you something later. Nothing major, just a small favor. Of course she did. I'd been back in the house for less than 5 minutes, and already the requests were starting. But instead of feeling that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach, the pressure to say yes, to be helpful, to prove my worth, I felt strangely calm, almost amused. "Sure thing," I said with a smile. "We can talk later." Mom wiped her hands on her apron and turned to give me a hug. "You look tired, sweetheart. Are you getting enough sleep? You're working too hard again, aren't you?" The concern in her voice sounded so genuine that I almost forgot about the video. Almost. But then I remembered her saying I was still the same pathetic failure, and the illusion shattered again. "Just the usual stress," I replied. "Nothing I can't handle." "That's our Emily," Dad called from the living room. "Tough as nails, nothing keeps her down for long." I excused myself to use the bathroom, needing a moment to process what I'd observed so far. On the surface, everything seemed normal. They were behaving exactly as they always had, warm, welcoming, interested in my life. But now I could see the subtle undercurrents I'd been blind to before. Sarah's immediate pivot to asking for money. Mom's concern that felt more like an assessment of my usefulness than genuine care. Dad's praise that somehow managed to sound condescending. Linda's relief that I'd shown up despite financial troubles. When I returned to the kitchen, I found them huddled together in quiet conversation that stopped abruptly when they saw me. Sarah looked slightly embarrassed, Mom busied herself unnecessarily with a potato salad, and Linda suddenly became very interested in the view out the window. "Don't mind us," Mom said too brightly. "Just discussing the menu for later." Right, the menu. I'm sure that's exactly what required such secretive whispering. As the afternoon progressed, I began to notice things I'd never seen before. The way they'd exchange glances when I mentioned work achievements, as if sharing some private joke. How conversations about my life always seemed to circle back to my financial situation. The subtle ways they'd test whether I was still willing and able to provide for them. Uncle Mike arrived around 2 o'clock with his usual boisterous energy. "Emily, look at you, all professional and successful. Your aunt tells me you're doing really well for yourself in the city." "I'm doing all right," I replied modestly, watching as Linda shot me a quick assessing look. "All right? Come on, don't be humble. Linda says you've got that fancy corner office now. Must be making the big bucks, huh?" Uncle Mike's laugh was loud and jovial, but his eyes were calculating. "The corner office is nice," I admitted, "but you know how it is. More responsibility, more stress. More money though, right?" he pressed, and I saw Linda tense slightly. This was it, the moment I'd been building toward all day. I could play along with their game, reassure them that their cash cow was still producing milk. Or I could start planting seeds of doubt. "Actually," I said slowly, "things have been a bit uncertain lately. The company's been making some changes, restructuring. You know how it is in corporate America these days." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Uncle Mike's smile faltered. Linda's face went pale. From the kitchen, I heard Mom and Sarah's conversation stop mid-sentence. "Oh," Uncle Mike said, clearly unsure how to respond. "Well, I'm sure everything will work out. You're a smart girl." But as he walked away, I saw him whisper something urgent to Linda, who immediately headed for the kitchen. Within minutes, I could hear hushed, anxious conversations happening in every corner of the house. I'd thrown a pebble into their pond, and the ripples were spreading exactly as I'd hoped they would. The real show was about to begin. By evening, the entire family dynamic had shifted. What started as a typical barbecue filled with laughter and casual conversation had transformed into something that felt more like a tense business meeting. Everyone was being extra nice to me, but underneath the surface I could sense their growing anxiety about my financial situation. Sarah was the first to make her move. She cornered me by the back porch while the others were cleaning up after dinner, her usual bubbly demeanor replaced with something more calculated. "So, Em," she began, twirling a strand of hair around her finger, a nervous habit she'd had since childhood. "I wanted to talk to you about that favor I mentioned earlier." "Of course," I said, settling into one of the patio chairs. "What's going on?" She sat across from me, and for the first time all day, her smile looked genuinely uncertain. "Well, you know how I've been trying to get my photography business off the ground, right? I've got this amazing opportunity to book a wedding, but I need some new equipment. Professional lighting, a better lens, that sort of thing." I nodded, already knowing exactly where this was heading. "The thing is, it's about $3,000, and with my current job at the boutique," she shrugged helplessly. "I was hoping maybe you could help me out. I know you mentioned things being tight, but I thought maybe, since it's an investment in my future." There it was, $3,000. Not exactly pocket change, even for someone with my salary. And the timing was perfect. She'd waited until after I'd mentioned financial uncertainty to make her pitch, probably hoping I'd feel guilty about potentially disappointing her. $3,000. I repeated slowly, watching her face. "That's a lot of money, Sarah." Her expression shifted almost imperceptibly. The warm, sisterly mask slipped just enough for me to catch a glimpse of something colder underneath. "I know it sounds like a lot, but think about it as an investment. Once my business takes off, I'll be able to pay you back with interest." "When do you need it by?" "Well, the wedding is in 6 weeks, so I'd need to order the equipment pretty soon." "Maybe by next Friday?" She leaned forward, reaching for my hand. "I know I'm asking a lot, especially with your work situation being uncertain, but you're the only person I can turn to. Mom and Dad are already struggling, and Uncle Mike just bought that boat." I almost had to admire the manipulation. She'd positioned herself as having no other options, while simultaneously reminding me that I was supposedly the only financially stable one in the family. She was also putting a deadline on it, creating artificial urgency to pressure me into a quick decision. "Let me think about it," I said finally. The mask slipped a little further. "Think about it. I thought. I mean, you've always been so supportive of my dreams. Remember when you helped me pay for those photography classes last year?" "I remember," I said quietly. "I also remember you saying those classes were going to help you start booking clients. What happened to that?" Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "The market is competitive, Emily. It takes time to build a reputation. This equipment would really make the difference." "Like the classes were supposed to?" For a moment, we just stared at each other. I could see her mind working, trying to figure out why I wasn't immediately agreeing like I always had before. Finally, she forced her smile back into place. "You're right to be cautious," she said, though her tone had cooled considerably. "I just thought, since we're family, you'd want to help me succeed." And there was the guilt trip, right on schedule. I was being positioned as the selfish sister who didn't support family dreams, when the reality was that I'd been supporting Sarah's various dreams for years: the photography classes, the jewelry-making supplies, the down payment on her car when she decided she needed something more professional for client meetings that never materialized. "I do want you to succeed, Sarah. I always have." She studied my face for a long moment, and I could see her recalibrating her approach. "Maybe we could do a payment plan? 1,000 now? And then smaller amounts over the next few months?" Before I could respond, Mom appeared in the doorway. "There you girls are. Sarah, your father wants to know if you're staying over tonight." "Actually, Mom," Sarah said, standing up quickly, "I think I should head home. I've got some things to take care of tomorrow." I watched as she practically fled into the house, clearly frustrated that her financial pitch hadn't gone according to plan. Mom settled into the chair Sarah had vacated, and I braced myself for round 2. "She seemed upset," Mom observed, though her tone suggested she already knew exactly why. "Just talking about her photography business," I replied neutrally. Mom nodded knowingly. "She's been working so hard on that. It's wonderful that she has such big dreams, don't you think? Though, of course, dreams require investment." There it was. Mom's version of the same pitch. More subtle than Sarah's direct approach, but with the same underlying message. Emily should open her wallet. "Investment can mean a lot of things," I said carefully. "Time, energy, learning new skills, building connections." "Oh, absolutely," Mom agreed quickly. "But sometimes you need capital too, don't you? That's just the reality of starting a business." I could hear Dad and Uncle Mike's voices drifting from the kitchen, and I caught fragments of their conversation. "Uncertain times. Maybe we should Don't want to pressure her, but they were talking about me. About my financial situation and what it might mean for them. Mom, I said suddenly, can I ask you something? Of course, sweetheart. Do you think I'm a failure? The question caught her off guard. She blinked several times, her mouth opening and closing as she searched for words. Emily, what a strange question. Of course not. Why would you ask such a thing? I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I'm living up to everyone's expectations. Oh, honey. She reached over and squeezed my hand, and for a moment, her concern seemed genuine. You're successful, you're independent, you've built a life for yourself in the city. We're all so proud of you. But then she continued, and you've been so generous with the family over the years. That takes a special kind of person. There it was again. Generous, not loving, not caring. Generous, as if my worth to them was measured entirely in financial terms. What if I couldn't be generous anymore? I asked quietly. What if I lost my job, or had to take a pay cut, or just decided I needed to focus on my own savings for a while? Mom's hand tightened on mine, and I saw something flicker across her face. Panic, maybe, or calculation. Well, that would be... We'd understand, of course. Family is about more than money. But her voice lacked conviction, and she couldn't quite meet my eyes when she said it. Would you? I pressed. Would you really understand? Emily, why are you asking these things? Is everything all right? Are you in some kind of trouble? The concern was back, but now I could hear the underlying anxiety. She wasn't worried about my well-being. She was worried about what my troubles might mean for the rest of them. I'm fine, Mom. Just thinking about priorities, that's all. She relaxed visibly. Well, that's healthy. It's good to reassess sometimes. She paused, then added with careful casualness. Though I hope you know that helping family will always be the right priority. I stared at her, this woman who had raised me, who had kissed my scraped knees and helped me with homework and taught me to drive. The woman who, just days ago, had called me a pathetic failure while laughing with the rest of my family. I'm starting to wonder what family really means, I said softly. Something cold flashed in Mom's eyes, so quickly I almost missed it. Then her warm maternal mask slid back into place. Family means everything, Emily. It's the only thing you can really count on in this world. As I sat there on the porch with the woman who gave birth to me, listening to her feed me lines about family loyalty while mentally calculating how much money she could extract from me, I realized that my experiment was complete. I finally saw them all clearly. And tomorrow, the real game would begin. I spent Sunday morning crafting what would become the most important email of my life. Not to my boss, not to a client, but to my own family. It was time to stop being reactive and start being strategic. If they wanted to play games with my emotions and my wallet, then I was going to show them what a real player looked like. The email was simple, professional, and devastatingly effective. Hi everyone, I hope you all enjoyed yesterday as much as I did. After our conversations, I've been doing some thinking about my finances and my future. I've decided to hire a financial advisor to help me restructure my spending and savings. As part of this process, I'll be putting a temporary hold on all non-essential expenses while I get my financial house in order. This includes gifts, loans, and other discretionary spending. I know you'll all understand and support me in making responsible choices. Love, Emily. I read it 3 times before hitting send, then sat back to wait for the explosion. It didn't take long. My phone started ringing within 10 minutes. Sarah's name appeared on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Then Mom called. Then Dad. Then Linda. I ignored them all, instead opening my laptop to work on some actual projects while occasionally glancing at my phone as the missed call notifications piled up. The text messages started around noon. Sarah, call me back. We need to talk about that email. Mom, sweetheart, I'm worried about you. This doesn't sound like you at all. Dad, Emily, what's this nonsense about a financial advisor? You've always been smart with money. Linda, honey, are you having some kind of crisis? We're all here for you. I let them stew for exactly 3 hours before responding to the group chat. Thanks for all the concern, everyone. I'm doing great. Just being more intentional about my financial future. I'll call you all later this week." That evening, Sarah showed up at my apartment. I watched her through the peephole, pacing back and forth in the hallway, clearly working up the nerve to knock. When she finally did, I waited a full minute before opening the door, just long enough for her anxiety to build. "Sarah," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "What a surprise." "We need to talk," she said, pushing past me into my living room. Her usual composed demeanor was nowhere to be found. Her hair was messy, her makeup slightly smudged, and she kept clenching and unclenching her fists. "About what?" I asked, closing the door and leaning against it. "About this financial advisor thing. Emily, what's really going on? Yesterday, you were considering helping me with the photography equipment, and today, you're suddenly cutting off all non-essential expenses?" She made air quotes around my words, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "I told you I'd think about it. I thought about it. And I decided that a financial advisor was right. I need to be more careful about discretionary spending." Sarah's mask was completely gone now. The sweet, slightly helpless little sister had been replaced by someone I barely recognized, someone angry and desperate and entitled. "Discretionary spending? Is that what you call helping your family now? What would you call it?" She stared at me for a long moment, clearly struggling to find the right approach. Finally, she sat down on my couch, her expression shifting to something that might have been vulnerability if I didn't know better. "Emily, I don't understand what's happening here. We're family. We've always supported each other. When you first moved to the city and were struggling, didn't we help you?" I almost laughed. "Help me how exactly?" "I worked 3 jobs to pay for college. I lived in a studio apartment the size of a closet for 2 years while I built my career. I ate ramen noodles for dinner more nights than I can count. What exactly did the family do to help me?" We believed in you. We supported your dreams." "With what? Phone calls? Encouraging words?" "Because I don't remember any financial support flowing in my direction." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Money isn't the only way to help someone." "Funny," I said quietly, "because it seems to be the only way you expect me to help you." The words hung in the air between us like a challenge. Sarah's face went through several expressions: surprise, anger, calculation, and finally, a kind of cold resignation. "I see what this is," she said, standing up abruptly. "You're having some kind of power trip? You like making people beg." "Beg for what?" "For your help, for your money. You like feeling superior to all of us." I looked at my sister, really looked at her, at the designer jeans I'd helped pay for, the expensive highlights in her hair that I'd funded, the manicured nails that came from salon visits I'd subsidized, all while she accused me of having a power trip. "Sarah," I said calmly, "when was the last time you asked me how I was doing? Not how work was going, not whether I could help with something, just how I was doing as a person?" She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. "When was the last time you called just to talk? When was the last time you offered to help me with anything? When was the last time you even asked if I needed help?" Silence. "I'll wait," I continued. "Take your time. Think really hard." More silence. "The truth is, Sarah, you don't actually know anything about my life beyond what I can provide for yours. You don't know what I worry about, what makes me happy, what keeps me up at night. You know my salary range and my willingness to spend it on family. That's it." "That's not true," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Prove it. Tell me about the last conversation we had that wasn't about money, work, or some favor you needed." She stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, and I felt a strange mix of sadness and satisfaction. Sadness because I was losing the illusion of having a close relationship with my sister. Satisfaction because I was finally seeing the truth. "I think you should leave," I said gently. "Emily, please. I'm sorry if I haven't been the best sister, but I need your help with this photography thing. It's really important to me." "Why?" "Because it's my dream. It's my chance to build something for myself. Your dream that requires $3,000 of my money. It's not just your money. It's an investment in my future, in our family's future." And there it was. The final card played. Not only was I supposed to fund her dreams, but I was supposed to see it as somehow benefiting me too. "Sarah," I said, walking to the door and opening it. "I want you to go home and think about something. Think about what you would do if I didn't exist. If there was no Emily to call when you needed money, what would your plan be then? But you do exist. For now? But what if I didn't? What if I lost my job tomorrow, or got hit by a bus, or just decided I was tired of being the family bank? What would you do then?" She stared at me with something approaching panic. "Emily, you're scaring me." "Good, you should be scared. Because the Emily who always said yes, who always opened her wallet, who always put everyone else's needs before her own, that Emily is gone." I held the door open wider. "Figure out your own backup plan, Sarah, because I'm not it anymore." After she left, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, looking out at the city lights. My phone was buzzing constantly with calls and texts from various family members, all of whom had apparently been contacted by Sarah for an emergency family meeting about Emily's situation. I turned the phone off and enjoyed the silence. Tomorrow I would start phase 2 of my plan. Tonight I was just going to savor the feeling of finally putting myself first. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. By Tuesday morning, my voicemail was full. 17 messages from various family members, each one more desperate than the last. I listened to them while drinking my coffee, treating them like a fascinating psychological study rather than emotional manipulation attempts. Message 1. Mom. "Emily, sweetheart, please call me back. Sarah told us about your conversation, and I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." Message 7. Dad. "Emily, this is ridiculous. You're acting like a completely different person. What's gotten into you?" Message 12. Linda. "Honey, I'm starting to worry that you're having some kind of breakdown. Maybe you should talk to someone professional." Message 17. Sarah. I'm sorry about last night. I was upset and I said things I didn't mean. Can we please just talk?" I deleted them all without returning a single call. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in months. I made plans that had nothing to do with my family. I called my college friend Jessica, whom I'd been neglecting because weekends were always consumed by family obligations and family-funded activities. "Emily?" Jessica's voice was bright with surprise. "Oh my God, it's been forever. How are you?" I'm really good. Are you free for dinner this weekend? Somewhere nice." "My treat." "Are you sure? I know you usually spend weekends with your family." "Not anymore. I'm trying something new." We made reservations at that expensive French place downtown that I'd always wanted to try, but never bothered with, because I was too busy funding everyone else's dreams to spend money on my own desires. Wednesday brought a new strategy from my family, the intervention. I came home from work to find Mom, Dad, and Linda sitting in my building's lobby. They'd somehow convinced the doorman to let them wait inside, probably with some story about being worried relatives. "There she is," Dad said, standing up as I entered. His expression was stern, like I was a teenager who'd missed curfew rather than a grown woman making her own financial decisions. "What are you all doing here?" I asked, though I already knew. "We need to talk," Mom said, rising from her chair with the kind of grave expression usually reserved for terminal diagnoses. "This has gone far enough," Linda nodded solemnly. "We're concerned about you, sweetheart. This isn't like you at all." I looked at the three of them, united in their mission to restore their financial benefactor to her proper role. "Would you like to come upstairs, or should we have this conversation in the lobby?" "Upstairs," Dad said firmly, as if he were making the decisions. Once we were in my apartment, they arranged themselves on my couch like a tribunal. I remained standing, maintaining the psychological advantage of height. "Emily," Mom began in her most maternal tone, "we love you, and we're worried. Sarah told us about your conversation, and frankly, we don't understand what's happening." "What specifically don't you understand?" "This sudden change," Dad interjected. "This talk about financial advisors and cutting off family support. You've never been selfish before." Selfish. There was that word again. What exactly am I being selfish about? You know what? Linda said, leaning forward. You're punishing us for something, and we can't figure out what we did wrong. I almost admired the performance. They genuinely seemed to believe their own narrative, that they were the victims of my sudden, inexplicable change in behavior. Let me ask you something, I said, settling into the chair across from them. If I lost my job tomorrow, how would that affect your lives? They exchanged glances, clearly not expecting this question. Well, we'd be concerned for you, of course, Mom said carefully. That's not what I asked. I asked how it would affect your lives specifically. More glances. Dad cleared his throat. Emily, what kind of question is that? A simple one. If I couldn't contribute financially to the family anymore, what would change for each of you? Silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Finally, Linda spoke up. Family isn't about money, Emily. We'd love you regardless of your financial situation. Would you? Because Sarah seemed pretty upset when I told her I couldn't help with her photography equipment. And Dad, didn't you just call me selfish for wanting to be more careful with my spending? That's different, Dad protested. We're not asking for handouts. We're family helping family. When was the last time any of you helped me with anything? Another silence. I mean anything at all. When did any of you offer to help me move apartments? When did you offer to bring me soup when I was sick? When did you offer to pet sit when I went out of town? When did you offer to help me with anything that didn't involve money flowing from me to you? Mom's face was flushing red. Emily, that's not fair. You never asked for help. Neither did any of you. You just assumed it would be provided. Because you're family. Dad's voice was rising. Family takes care of each other. You're right, I said calmly. Family should take care of each other. All of each other. Not just one person taking care of everyone else while getting nothing in return. Linda leaned back, her expression shifting from concern to something colder. So that's what this is about. You feel unappreciated. Do I have reason to feel appreciated? Of course you do, Mom exclaimed. We tell you all the time how proud we are of you, how grateful we are for everything you do. Grateful for what I do or grateful for what I give? The distinction hung in the air like smoke. Emily, Dad said, his voice taking on a warning tone, you're being incredibly unfair right now. We raised you, we supported your dreams, we celebrated your successes. And this is how you repay us. How exactly did you support my dreams? With specific examples, please. Dad's mouth opened and closed several times. We believed in you. Did you? Because I seem to remember being told that college was a waste of money for someone like me. I remember being told that moving to the city was foolish and unrealistic. I remember being told that I was too ambitious for my own good. We were trying to protect you from disappointment, Mom said weakly. And yet, when I succeeded despite your protection, you were suddenly very interested in celebrating with me. Or rather, celebrating my ability to celebrate you. Linda stood up abruptly. I don't like your tone, young lady. My tone? I laughed, and it wasn't a pleasant sound. Linda, I'm 32 years old. I'm not a young lady you can scold into compliance anymore. Clearly not, she snapped, the mask of loving aunt finally slipping completely. Because the Emily we raised would never treat her family this way. The Emily you raised was trained to be a people pleaser who would sacrifice her own needs to avoid conflict. You're right. She wouldn't treat you this way. She'd apologize right now and promise to keep funding everyone's lives while ignoring her own. And what's wrong with that? Dad demanded. What's wrong with putting family first? Nothing, if it goes both ways. Everything, if it only goes one way. I stood up and walked to the door, opening it. I think this conversation is over. Emily, Mom said, tears forming in her eyes. Please don't do this. We're your family. For a moment, looking at her tears, I almost wavered. Almost fell back into the old pattern of apologizing and fixing and funding. But then I remembered the video, their laughter, their casual cruelty. when they thought I couldn't hear. "You're right," I said quietly. "You are my family. And maybe someday we can figure out what that means beyond financial transactions. But until then, I think it's best if we take some time apart." They left without another word, but not before Linda shot me a look of pure venom that told me exactly what she thought of my betrayal of their unspoken agreement. After they were gone, I poured myself another glass of wine and sat in my kitchen, feeling lighter than I had in years. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "Still on for dinner Saturday? I'm so excited." "Wouldn't miss it," I replied. For the first time in my adult life, I was putting my own happiness first. And it felt absolutely liberating. 3 weeks passed, in blissful silence. No phone calls, no text messages, no surprise visits. For the first time in years, my weekends belonged to me. I went to museums, tried new restaurants, read books I'd been meaning to get to for months. I even started taking a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for because I was too busy managing everyone else's crises. Jessica and I had our dinner at the French restaurant, and it was everything I'd hoped it would be. We talked for hours about our lives, our dreams, our fears, a real conversation between friends who actually cared about each other as people, not bank accounts. "You seem different," Jessica observed over dessert. "Happier, more, yourself." "I cut off my family," I said simply. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "What happened?" I told her everything. The video, the barbecue, the confrontations, the intervention. Jessica listened without interrupting, her expression growing more incredulous with each detail. "Emily," she said when I finished, "I'm so sorry, but also, I'm proud of you. I've watched you exhaust yourself for years trying to make them happy, and it was never enough. You deserve so much better." It was the validation I didn't know I needed. Someone who actually knew me, not what I could provide, but who I was as a person, telling me that I'd made the right choice. But my peace was about to be shattered. It happened on a Thursday evening. I was coming home from my pottery class, my hands still slightly dusty with clay, feeling accomplished and content. The doorman handed me an envelope along with my usual mail. "Hand-delivered about an hour ago," he said. The lady said it was urgent. I recognized Mom's handwriting immediately. My stomach clenched as I rode the elevator up to my apartment, the envelope feeling heavier with each floor. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a photograph. The letter was brief. "Emily, your father is in the hospital. Heart attack. The doctors say he needs surgery, but our insurance won't cover all of it. We need $15,000 by Monday, or they'll transfer him to the county hospital. I know we've had our differences lately, but surely you won't let your father suffer because of some misunderstanding. He's asking for you. Please come, Mom." The photograph was of Dad in a hospital bed, looking pale and frail, with tubes and monitors attached to him. He looked genuinely sick, genuinely vulnerable, nothing like the angry man who'd tried to guilt me in my living room 3 weeks ago. My hands were shaking as I set the letter down on my kitchen counter. This was it, their final card, the one they'd been saving for when all else failed. Family medical emergency. The one request I couldn't possibly refuse without looking like a monster. Except, something felt wrong. I grabbed my laptop and did a reverse image search on the photograph. Nothing came up, which meant it was likely genuine and recent. Then I searched for the hospital, mentioned in Mom's letter. It existed, and it was indeed where you'd expect someone in their area to go for cardiac care. But the timing was too convenient, the amount was too specific, and the delivery method was too dramatic. I called the hospital. "I'm trying to reach a patient," I said when someone answered. "He was admitted for a heart attack. The last name is—" "I'm sorry," the receptionist interrupted, "but I can't give out patient information unless you're immediate family. I am his daughter." "One moment, please." My heart pounded as I waited, half hoping I was wrong, half hoping I was right. "I'm sorry, but we don't have anyone by that name in our cardiac unit." "Are you sure?" He would have been admitted in the last day or two. "Let me check our entire system." "No, I'm not showing anyone with that name admitted to our facility in the past week." I hung up and immediately called 2 other hospitals in the area. Same result. Then I did something I hadn't done since this all started. I called Linda directly. She answered on the first ring, as if she'd been waiting by the phone. Emily. Oh, thank God. Did you get your mother's letter? I did. How's Dad doing? Oh, sweetheart, it's been so scary. The doctors say he needs surgery right away, but you know how these things are with insurance. Which hospital is he at? A pause. St. Mary's. Why? I just called St. Mary's. They don't have him. Another pause, longer this time. Well, maybe they transferred him. You know how busy these places get. Records can be confusing. Linda, where is Dad really? Silence stretched between us like a chasm. Linda, Emily, please, just listen. Is Dad in the hospital at all? More silence. Linda, answer me. Is my father in the hospital? A sigh, long and defeated. No. The word hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting it. So you faked a medical emergency to try to get money out of me. It wasn't my idea. Your mother was desperate. Sarah's about to lose her apartment because she can't make rent without that photography equipment money she was counting on. Your father's been laid off. Yes, laid off, that part's true, and they're behind on their mortgage. Everyone's panicking, and your mother thought if you believed your father was in danger. You thought I'd what? Open my wallet and forget about everything that's happened? Emily, you have to understand. I understand perfectly. You're all willing to lie about life-threatening medical emergencies to manipulate me into giving you money. You're willing to fake photographs and forge hospital documents and deceive me about my own father's health just to get access to my bank account. It's not like that. It's exactly like that, Linda. You've moved from guilt trips and emotional manipulation to outright fraud. Emily, please, everyone is really struggling. And whose fault is that? Whose fault is it that Sarah never learned to budget because she always knew I'd bail her out? Whose fault is it that Mom and Dad never built up savings because they could always count on me to cover emergencies? Whose fault is it that none of you have backup plans because I was always your backup plan? Linda was crying now, ugly sobs that might have moved me a month ago. Emily, we're family. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It used to mean everything to me. But you've taught me that family, to you, just means having someone to use. I hung up and immediately blocked her number, just as I'd blocked all the others. Then I sat in my kitchen, staring at the fake letter and the real photograph of my father, taken God knows when or where, and felt something I'd never felt before toward my family, complete and utter disgust. They weren't just users, they weren't just manipulators, they were criminals, willing to commit fraud to get money from me, and that's when I knew what I had to do. I opened my laptop and started typing the most important email of my life, not to my family this time, but to myself. A record of everything that had happened, every lie, every manipulation, every attempt to defraud me, because Emily the pathetic failure was gone forever. And Emily the woman who wouldn't be victimized was just getting started. 6 months later, I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop, a little place I discovered during one of my weekend explorations, when Sarah walked in. I saw her before she saw me, and for a moment, I considered leaving. But then I realized I didn't need to run anymore. I wasn't the same person who had once scrambled to avoid family confrontations. She spotted me and froze, coffee cup halfway to her lips at the counter. For a full 30 seconds, we just stared at each other across the crowded cafe. Then, slowly, she walked over to my table. Emily, she said, her voice uncertain. Can I sit? I gestured to the empty chair across from me. She looked different, thinner, less polished. Her hair was back to its natural brown color, instead of the expensive highlights, and her clothes, while still nice, weren't the designer pieces I'd grown accustomed to seeing her wear. How are you? She asked, settling into the chair like she was afraid it might disappear. I'm well, I replied honestly. Really well, actually. She nodded, fidgeting with her coffee cup. I heard about your promotion. Congratulations. I raised an eyebrow. How did you hear about that? Jessica posted about it on social media. She was celebrating with you at that fancy restaurant downtown. Sarah's voice carried a note of something Not quite envy, but recognition of a world she was no longer part of. "Jessica's a good friend," I said simply. "She is." Sarah looked down at her hands. "Emily, I owe you an apology." I waited, saying nothing. "Actually, I owe you about 1,000 apologies, but I'll start with one." She took a shaky breath. "The hospital thing. That was awful. Unconscionable. I knew it was wrong when Mom suggested it, and I should have stopped it." "But you didn't." "No, I didn't." She met my eyes for the first time since sitting down. "I was panicking about money, about losing my apartment, about my photography business failing again, and I let that panic make me into someone I don't recognize." "How are things now?" I asked, and I was surprised to find that I genuinely wanted to know. "Hard," she admitted. "I did lose the apartment. I'm living with Mom and Dad again, which is humbling. Dad found another job, thankfully, part-time at the hardware store. Mom's been taking in alterations work. And She paused, seeming to struggle with something. "I got a full-time job at a marketing firm. It's entry-level, the pay is terrible, and I spend most days making photocopies and answering phones. But it's honest work, and I'm learning things. What about photography? I still do it on weekends, small local jobs. Portraits, family sessions, that kind of thing. I'm building a real client base this time. Slowly, properly, no shortcuts, no expensive equipment I can't afford." She managed a small smile. "Turns out, you can take decent photos with basic gear, if you actually know what you're doing." I found myself almost impressed, despite everything. "That sounds like a solid plan." "It is. It's also nothing like the fantasy one had about instant success and creative fulfillment." She laughed, but there was no bitterness in it. Reality is a lot less glamorous than I thought it would be. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, sipping our coffee. Around us, the cafe hummed with the conversations of people living their own lives, dealing with their own struggles, making their own way in the world. "Emily," Sarah said finally, "I want you to know that I don't expect anything from you. I'm not here to ask for money or help or forgiveness. I missed my sister. The real one, not the ATM I turned you into." "Do you know who that real sister is?" I asked quietly. She considered this seriously. "I'm starting to. I know she's stronger than I ever gave her credit for. I know she's kinder than we deserved. I know she loves art museums, and has terrible taste in romantic comedies, and makes the most amazing lasagna I've ever had." I smiled despite myself. "You remember my lasagna?" "I remember a lot of things I ignored when I was too busy focusing on what you could do for me instead of who you were." She leaned forward slightly. "I know you collect vintage postcards and you're afraid of horror movies and you sing off-key in the car, but you don't care because it makes you happy." My throat tightened unexpectedly. These were details from years ago, little things I'd shared during family dinners and phone calls, pieces of myself I thought no one was really listening to. "I know you always wanted to take pottery classes but never had time," she continued. "And I know you love thunderstorms and hate mushrooms and you cry at those commercials with dogs in them." "I started taking pottery classes," I said softly. "Really? How is it?" "Frustrating, messy, completely addictive." I pulled out my phone and showed her a photo of my latest project, a lopsided bowl that was somehow still beautiful. "I made this last week." "Emily, that's amazing. You made that?" The pride in her voice sounded genuine, and I realized with surprise that it felt good to share this part of my life with someone who actually cared about the accomplishment itself, not what it might mean for them. "The teacher says I have natural instincts but terrible technique." I laughed. "So basically, I'm a disaster who occasionally creates something worthwhile by accident." "Sounds like life in general," Sarah said, and we both smiled. The moment stretched between us, fragile but real. Then Sarah's expression grew serious again. "I don't expect you to forgive us," she said. "What we did, all of it, but especially the fake hospital thing. It was unforgivable. I wouldn't forgive us if I were you." "I haven't forgiven you," I replied honestly, "but I'm not angry anymore either." "What are you then?" I thought about it. "Free. For the first time in my life, I'm making decisions based on what I want, not what other people need from me. I'm building relationships with people who see me as a whole person, not a solution to their problems. I'm finally living my life instead of funding everyone else's. Sarah nodded slowly. You look happy. Really happy, not just successful. I am happy. It took me 32 years to figure out what that felt like. She finished her coffee and stood up to leave, then hesitated. Emily, would it be okay if I texted you sometimes? Not asking for anything, just sister stuff? Maybe updates about the pottery classes? Or photos of whatever disaster I'm working on in my tiny darkroom setup? I looked at her, really looked at her. The desperation was gone. The calculation was gone. The entitlement was gone. What remained looked like the sister I'd always hoped I had, the one who might actually care about my pottery disasters as much as I cared about her photography progress. I'd like that, I said. But Sarah, yeah? The first time you ask me for money, even indirectly, even in an emergency, even if you're starving on the street, this ends. Forever. She met my eyes steadily. I understand. And Emily? I won't. I can't promise I'll never need help again, but I can promise I'll figure out my own solutions. I have to learn how to do that. After she left, I sat in the coffee shop for another hour, processing the conversation. It wasn't forgiveness. I wasn't ready for that, and I wasn't sure I'd ever be. But it was something. A possibility. A door left slightly ajar instead of slammed shut forever. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Movie night tonight? I found the worst romantic comedy ever made and I have wine. Perfect, I replied. I'll bring the lasagna. As I walked home through the city streets, I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. Emily the people pleaser, Emily the family ATM, Emily the pathetic failure who thought she had to buy love because she wasn't worthy of receiving it freely. That woman was gone, and I didn't miss her. In her place was someone I was still getting to know. Emily the pottery student, Emily the museum enthusiast, Emily the friend who could be counted on for terrible movie nights and excellent lasagna. Emily the woman who said no when she meant no, and yes when she meant yes. Emily the person who was learning, day by day, what it meant to be loved for who she was rather than what she could provide. My family might figure out how to be part of this new life, or they might not. Either way, I was gonna be fine. Better than fine, actually. I was gonna be happy. And for the first time in my life, that felt like enough.